Hi, good afternoon, Besa. I'm glad you were able to come. So I'll go ahead and get us started so I'm not holding everyone up on time. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar. Um, oh, one more thing. I have to fix our screen sharing. There we go. All right, now we are ready to roll. Um, Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on the Taylor-McGee Mini Grants Program. We've been very excited about this and are really happy to talk with y'all about it today. I am Alex Grandstaff, ASAN's Programs Manager, and my pronouns are they, them. And this webinar today is about Taylor-McGee Mini Grants Program, what the mini grants are, and how to apply. Eli, if you would like a chance to introduce yourself real quick, please feel free
Sure.
to.
How's my audio? Is it good?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect. My name is Eli Bullard-Dobbin. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the grassroots associate here at ASAN. And I'm also the person who will be receiving these mini grant applications and reviewing them with Alex and a few other folks. So you'll probably be in communication with us a lot if you are intending on applying. Excited to see all your proposals and look forward to working together.
Yep. Eli, if you want to tab to the next slide. So first, we'd like to talk about who was Taylor-McGee. Taylor-McGee was an incredible advocate who was a member of ASAN staff. Taylor was the founder of and leader of the Black Disability Collective, a group which advocates and champions for the lives of Black disabled people. Taylor coordinated information and resources during the 2020 protests against police brutality. And Taylor wrote essays and articles, advocated for change at her college campus, and worked in multiple advocacy positions, including here at ASAN. Taylor unfortunately passed away in 2022, and Taylor's dedication and their fierce love for their communities was apparent to anyone who knew them. And during their time at ASAN, Taylor is actually a crucial part of creating and planning for this mini grants program, and that is why it is named after them in their honor. So rest in power, Taylor, and this is a really important part of this program that we want to share with all of you. Next slide. And this is Taylor-McGee. And we really hope that this mini grant program honors their legacy. Next slide, please. So first off, we want to explain what is a mini grant. So a mini grant mini grants are small amounts of money that are given out by a group. So for example, governments, schools, nonprofits like ASAN can run mini grant programs. Mini grants can help a person or a group pay for a specific project, so they're goal-oriented. And ASAN's mini grant program is currently focused on giving about 4 to 6 people, like individual people or groups, up to $5,000 to fund a project. And the people who get this money can use it to fund an advocacy project, and advocacy projects can be local, state, or national projects. Next slide, please. So there's 2 mini grants available under the Taylor-McGee mini grant program. One mini grant is the Affiliates in Action mini grant, and the other mini grant is the Self-Advocates Transforming Equitable Policy mini grant, or the STEP mini grant. And we're going to explain what both of those are on the next few slides. Next slide, please. So first off is who can apply to the Affiliates in Action mini grant. So the Affiliates in Action mini grant, in order to apply for it, you must be a current affiliate. And we'll explain how to apply to be an affiliate in the next couple slides. And in order to do that, you have to complete your application process and be accepted into the mini grants, into the affiliate program. If your group is not yet affiliated with ASAN, you have to apply to become an affiliate and be accepted before applying to the mini grant. In order to qualify as an affiliate, a group must be actively meeting, and that means that your group meets at least once a month, either virtually or in person. Your group also must be self-advocate led, so run by people who identify as self-advocates with developmental disabilities. So for example, autistic people or people with intellectual disabilities. Also, the Affiliates in Action grant is open to our international affiliates. Next slide, please. So for a little bit more information about who can apply to become an affiliate, in order to apply to be an affiliate of ASAN, a group must have a year of working experience, be active with multiple members who meet regularly, be led at least in part by autistic self-advocates, have at least a third of your work be dedicated to advocacy work, and have values in line with ASAN's values and mission. Next slide, please. So how to become an affiliate is you actually would email me, ASAN's program manager, Alex Grandstaff. You can email me at agrandstaff@autisticadvocacy.org and ask me for an affiliate application. You can also find this information available on our website, on our affiliate page. It actually lists my email address and tells you how to get in touch with me. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about the Self-Advocates Transforming Equitable Policy, or STEP mini grant. So folks applying to the STEP mini grant do not need to be an ASAN affiliate. They do need to be a person with a developmental disability, but you do not need an official diagnosis to apply. Also, individual applicants must be a person of color, and group applicants must be led by people of color, and at least 50% of the membership must be people of color. Next slide, please. So for both the Affiliates in Action and the STEP mini grant, all applicants need to be 18 years or older when they apply. If you are applying, if your group is applying and you have members who are under the age of 18, that is okay. But the project must be led by members who are at least 18 years or older. Next slide, please. So we want to highlight that ASAN is very interested in projects led by these groups or that help these groups. And that we're talking about autistic people of color, non-speaking autistic people, both full-time and part-time, autistic people who are LGBTQ+, and LGBTQ+ stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer. It also stands for other sexual orientations and gender identities that get treated unfairly by society, and autistic people with intellectual disabilities. These folks often are part of groups that get overlooked when it comes to grant opportunities, and so we're really looking for applicants from these communities. Next slide, please. So what kind of projects are we looking to fund with the mini grant program? Both the Affiliates in Action and the STEP mini grant program are for projects that are focused on creating change for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities at the local, state, and national levels. So your project can be focused locally, can be focused statewide, and can be focused nationally, or have an impact that will affect all those levels. We specifically want to fund projects from either self-advocacy groups or pardon me, I jumbled my phrasing. We want to fund specific projects from either self-advocacy groups or individual self-advocates. So in other words, a specific project that you are looking to tackle as opposed to something more general, and we'll get into that in a minute. Next slide, please. So to give examples of projects that the Taylor-McGee Grassroots Mini Grants could pay for, that could be when we're talking about specific projects, that can be Hill Day visits to talk about disability policy, easy read and plain language translations of important information. So for example, writing about disability and healthcare or self-advocates' rights, teaching people about important policy topics, for example, giving a training about the HCBS settings rule to self-advocates, coalition building work, So working with other groups to build your movement to better serve your communities, and mutual aid projects. So helping self-advocates in your community. This is not a like limiting list of it has to be one of these things. This is an example list to help y'all get an understanding of the kind of work that we are looking for. Next slide, please. Things that these mini grants will not pay for. So right now, we're not looking to pay for general operating support. So in other words, this is not money that is just to keep your group going. Also, we are not looking to fund regularly planned programming or events. So for example, a conference that happens every year, that would not be a good fit for the mini grants. Next slide, please. So how many projects will ASAN pay for at this time? We are hoping to fund 4 to 6 mini grant projects at a time. So in this current grant cycle. Next slide, please. And how much can each project get? Right now, the maximum amount of money a project can get is $5,000. If your project does not need $5,000, that is okay. You can apply for the amount that you need under that. So each project can get up to $5,000. We will give grantees half of the funds in January of 2025 when the projects start, and then we will give the other half of the funds in June 2025. Next slide, please. What do grant awardees get along with the funding? So in addition to getting the money from us, grantees will also get advice during quarterly check-ins. Quarterly check-ins means during the cycle in which you are getting the grant money, you will get to meet with ASAN staff 4 times to talk about what's happening with your project, support you might need, questions you might have, that sort of thing. So you'll get advice during those quarterly check-ins, online training and support, which will tie in with the quarterly check-ins of we'll be doing our like webinar offerings and things along those lines to help provide support to our mini grant grantees, and also help with networking. ASAN may not always have the perfect contact for you, but say in your project, if you are looking for, say you're working on something and you could use the help of someone who's done similar work in another state, and ASAN happens to know a contact that could be helpful to you, we will try and put you in touch with that person if they are available and have the capacity to give you some support or talk with you about it. Next slide, please. So what do grant awardees need to do? So once you get the money, you'll be a grant awardee. And the grant awardees, we will expect them to give ASAN updates on how their projects are going. So that will happen during those 4 quarterly check-ins. Meet with us on the quarterly basis, and we will work with the grantees' schedules. So there will be set periods during the year where we want to meet with you, but that will be a time where we'll reach out to you and coordinate a meeting time that works for both ASAN team members and our grantees. Make a budget for your project so we know how you are spending the money, and then update that budget each quarter to show how the money is being spent. Next slide, please. So our grant timeline, to give you an idea of what we are looking at going forward. So in May 2024, next month, our applications will go live. And when this happens, we are actually going to have another webinar that is going to be focused on walking through the application, like explaining the questions, but also offering office hours where folks can come and ask for some help around applying, because we really want to set folks up for success here. So that's going to happen in May. The application window will close in July. So that means you have from May through the application window closing in July to apply. Then August through September, we will be doing applicant interviews with applicants that we are interested in hearing some more from. And then in October of 2024, we will contact the awardees and let them know that they have been accepted for the mini grants program. Next slide, please. And then continuing the timeline, January of 2025 is when the projects will begin. We will give the first half of the funds to the grantees. And then March of 2025 is that first check-in. June will be the second check-in, and also when the rest of the money will be given to the awardees. And then September, we will have our third check-in. And then December is when the projects end and we will have the final grantee check-in. And we recognize that like there may be other things happening in your project, but we are ideally looking for projects that can be sort of like done within the year. And so that's why it says here in December 2025, excuse me, projects end. Next slide, please. So now we're going to open up the webinar for folks to ask us questions, and you can either ask in the chat or ask via the Q&A function here. And I believe we have mics set up. So if you would like to come off mute and ask your question, you are welcome to do that as well. So Sam Marcus says, will there be initial support with planning projects and perhaps some resource connection? I'll do my best to answer your question. In terms of planning projects, we will be trying to provide some scaffolding around things like, if folks are familiar with Smarty Goals, which is a tool that is used to help folks make sure that the project that they are doing is actually achievable by making it measurable, identifying who you should be collaborating with, who you need to reach out to, and also making sure that your project is inclusive and equitable. So we do have some tools like that we are going to be sharing with potential candidates and using to help them really get very like clear on what they are hoping to achieve and the steps that they can take to achieve it. In terms of resource connection, that's as I mentioned earlier, ASAM will do our best if there is something where a grantee comes to us and asks us questions about I'm trying to think of like an example that I can use to make this more concrete for y'all. Say a grantee is doing a project about improving public transportation accessibility in their county. And they want to know if we know anybody who has successfully lobbied to improve like the accessibility of bus stations in their town. If we do know somebody, then we will let them know that and then do our best to connect that person to the grantee so they can ask them questions about strategy and stuff like that. So that's kind of what we are envisioning for resource connection. Sam, did that answer your question? Okay, awesome. While you're typing, I'm going to move down the chat for folks. Okay, Eli got Joanna's question. And yes, you can submit once the application window opens from May 15th through July 31st. y'all can submit your applications at any time during that window. It's just once the window closes at the end of July, we can't accept any more applications. Okay. And okay. Next question, do the individual STEP grants have to be based around policy improvements? So just like, I'm assuming the question means like if you were applying as an individual person for a STEP grant, it does still need to be based around advocacy. So those same examples that we used in a previous slide of maybe you're organizing a Hill Day, but maybe you're also, maybe you're creating easy read content for your community. Maybe you're doing workshops for your community on how to know your rights or something like that. Maybe you are working on establishing a mutual aid fund in your community, or a mutual aid program. We know that obviously an individual person is going to have a different like scale of what they are working on versus a group. So we will be evaluating stuff based on that. But regardless of which grant you are applying to, or whether you're applying as an individual or a group, we do still want applicants to be focused on advocacy work. Please let me know if that answers your question. And let's see. Jose has said, oh, hello, moving chat. Could a project use funds for community trainings that promote inclusivity and accessibility? Yes, that counts as advocacy work. Trainings that are oriented on, that in some way are improving the lives of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in your community do count. I'm going to switch to the Q&A real quick, because I see that I've got a few folks in here. Okay. So Rachel has asked, can you explain more about what it means to be an affiliate? I absolutely can. Oh, Eli, would you like to come off mute and answer?
Oh, I was just trying to help you along, but yeah, I could answer if you want me to.
Oh,
because it shows.
You're welcome to.
Yeah, you're so fine. So an affiliate group is essentially groups of self-advocates who are doing things in their respective regions and communities locally that receive support from ASAN in various ways. We connect them with our resources. We boost their events to some degree to our circles. We meet with affiliate groups once a month to check in with folks around what their challenges are, what their needs are, what resources they're searching for. And we really want to kind of grow this network so that more people can benefit from it. And so one of the reasons that we have an affiliate mini grant is to kind of increase that resource and that kind of community sharing. Did I miss anything, Alex?
Okay, let me, okay. Could an anonymous person has asked, could the grant funds be used for stipends and food? Yes, you can use the grant funds to pay yourself as you are doing this advocacy work. You can use it, food, I'm not sure. I would have to check in with our team on specific context, but I think that one is probably a maybe, depending on what we mean by like using it for food. Casey has asked, I am an autistic. Oh, go ahead, Eli.
Yeah, before you move on, I would say that probably in certain cases, the reason it's a maybe, right, is like if you're having a workshop and you're catering the workshop for the attendees of the workshop, that is food, and that would be a thing to like, yes, it would make sense. But if we're looking at your project and the majority of the funding is going to stipends and food instead of advocacy, we're going to have concerns. So just keep that in mind that like we want it to be balanced. Like you should be getting paid for the labor you're doing. And if you are, especially if you're an individual doing this work alone, we want you to take that into consideration, but also know how the breakdown of the budget when you're applying is going to look so that we feel like you're putting a lot of thought into how things are being spent.
Yes, thank you for that elaboration. I'm going to answer, there's two more questions sitting in the Q&A right now, and then I'll switch back to answering questions in the chat. So we have Casey in the Q&A asking, I am an autistic self-advocate and adult program director at Autism TN. Autism TN facilitates multiple self-advocates groups, including the Spectrum Connection for LGBTQIA plus autistic adults and Unveiling Autistic Identity for late discovered autistic adults. Autism TN's executive director is not autistic, but since our self-advocate groups are run by autistic people, but our self-advocates groups are run by autistic people. Since the groups themselves are led by autistic people, would one of more of our self-advocacy groups or collectively be able to apply? Yes, apply to become an ASAN affiliate. Yes, your individual, the self-advocacy groups, since they are led by self-advocates, those groups can apply for our affiliate program and go through the application process for the affiliate program. And then we have Anonymous asking, could the project start earlier or end a bit later than January to December 2025? Yes. If your project starts before January 2025, that is okay. Depending on, because we are looking to fund more like a project that sort of is like within its own container as opposed to ongoing work. That's why we don't fund general funding. So if your project starts, say, a few months before January 2025, it can still be considered for the grant. Just like if your project ends up going a bit longer than December of 2025, it can also still be considered. And also we recognize once someone is accepted into the grant program, they may plan for their project to only run for 1 year, but it may actually take a little bit longer, and that's okay. But the only thing to remember is ASAN will only fund the project for that year of 2025. That's how long that grant will run. And you will get the money, first half of the money in January and the second half of the money in June. Okay, that has put us through the Q&A. I'm going to scroll back through the chat
And I think
to make sure.
An additional clarification is this is not a renewed grant. Like if you wanted to do the same project the following year or a different project the following year, you would need to reapply, and we would be considering, again, a vast different pool of applicants, and you may not get reselected, or you maybe your project is one of like the better, I don't know, like it just depends on every year who applies and what we pick. But I also it fell out of my mind. I had a thing to add on and now it is gone. So go ahead back to answering the questions and I'll see if it comes back to me.
That sounds perfect. Thank you, Eli. And for context, in case you aren't familiar with applying to grants, there are some grants that exist where you can apply to them. And then once you have applied to the grant and gotten the grant, the organization that is giving that funding, once that first cycle of the grant is finished, they said they agreed they will give you money for 1 year. At the end of that year, they may say, okay, do you need more money? You can basically write them like a second application and say, we would like to continue working with you. We would like you to continue giving us money for this project. And the grant organization giving you money can decide then if they want to continue working with you. That is one way grants can work. That is not how the Taylor-McGee mini grants program will work. What we are doing, as Eli said, is each year we are taking in new projects. So we will not, once that 1 year grant cycle ends, if your project continues past it and you would like us to continue funding it, you would have to basically act as if you were starting all over again and complete the application again. I hope that explains.
The last thing was that just keep in mind that if your project is starting before the funds are dispensed, you would be getting reimbursed on the back end. So that means your group or you as an individual must already kind of have the budget sort of existing to begin the project because the funds are dispensed in 2025. And that is just the reality of how we have set this opportunity up because we want there to be ample time for folks to be able to consider the affiliate application program. We want people to be able to come to us with questions about it beforehand. And so then we'll be really situating, hopefully, these applicants who are approved into a really solid place to begin this project in 2025. So those two dispersal dates are in that year. So if your projects are falling outside of that year, you may have to consider fronting some of that cost and getting reimbursed on the back end.
Yes, thank you, Eli. That's a good point to highlight. If your project begins before January 2025, and there's anything that you need to pay for before January 2025, you'll need to have that money to pay for it. Because ASAN will not start giving the folks who get the grant any money before January 2025. So that's why we have that start date. Let me swing back in here. Okay, yes, I answered Jose. Sam came back with clarification. I'm wondering essentially if I'm not exactly sure how much financial support my project may need, will there be initial support to tweak my plan? Say I was awarded a mini grant and my estimate for how much support I need is off in either direction. Is there flexibility and learning opportunities for situations like that? I'm wondering exactly how business savvy I need to come already. Got you, Sam. Okay, so here is the thing that we know about advocacy projects is budgets are all of us making a good guess about how much something might cost. So we may not, things sometimes cost less than we expected them to, which is wonderful. Sometimes things cost more than we expected them to. What I would advise, because ASAN, the maximum we can give any like project is $5,000 for this. So we can't go above $5,000. So I want to make sure everyone knows that. But also, if you are not sure how much something will cost, do the research of like looking up what you are hoping to pay for and go with the biggest amount that it would cost, because it's a lot easier to deal with, oh, I thought this would cost more money than it actually did, and so there's money left over, than oh, I asked for less money than I actually needed. So I would be generous in the estimate, because I also don't know that ASAN will be able to, once we have once a budget is submitted and once it is finalized with us, I don't know that we would be able to increase the funding amount for grants, even if it's still below that $5,000 threshold. That is not a encouragement to just automatically ask us for $5,000. But that is basically like check in, and that is part of the interview process, I will say. If a grant applicant gets to the interview stage, if we've looked at the budget and we have questions about the budget, of maybe we're worried that you have not like thought of an expense that you might have, or if we're worried that maybe you've asked like too little here or too much, we can have that conversation and provide a little bit of guidance and support on that, so you can finalize the budget before the like final stages of the application process. I hope that helps. Awesome. And it looks like I've got two more in the Q&A. So let's pop here. Besa said, if we have multiple focuses / objectives for our project, example, coalition building locally / political education and advocacy, would we place separate applications? That is such a good question. I'm sorry, I'm thinking. I think my answer, and also please feel free to email me to circle back on this one because I am not fully sure. But off the top of my head, my answer would be it depends on um, how closely knit those two goals are. So say if you're coalition building with the goal of like expanding political education and advocacy in your community. Those two things I think could go under one grant because they're two parts of the same project. If you're coalition building and the goal of your coalition is very separate from the political education bit, then I think those would be separate applications. That is my answer at the moment. Please let me know if that makes sense or if there's follow-up questions, and I hope that helps.
I would, yeah, so I would also say that like if there are two separate projects, you can clearly delineate that these are two separate projects, like they're two different non-interacting working parts to get these two separate foci, objectives, whatever met, then those are two separate applications, even though you'd be applying as the same person or the same group each time. However, say, you're doing something like starting a clean air solidarity club in your community for disabled folks who need COVID safer spaces to exist. And so you're collaborating with maybe a mask block, like a mask block group in the area that does distribution of political education, long COVID information, and like zine distribution information, PPE distribution, things like that. Those are two separate focuses or foci or like objectives, like you're saying, but at the same time, that collaboration work is leading to that, and it kind of falls under one project. Does that make sense as an example?
Yeah, I think it does. Like, I think it's a good example of like basically because they're both goals, like the coalition and the like education part, their goals are both oriented towards COVID harm reduction. Um, so basically, I think that's the best way to think about it is if you have two different elements that you are hoping to get funded, if those elements are working towards the same goal, I think they can go on the same application. If they have very different goals, then they should be separate applications.
Also, that was an accident. I didn't mean to put it now on the last slide.
Oh, no worries. I didn't even notice.
We're still taking questions. Don't worry.
Yes, we are still taking questions. Wonderful. Please do reach out via email. And then Rachel has said, for the STEP grant, does the current self-advocate membership need to be 50% people of color? The membership of the self-advocate group I co-chair changes each year. I am BIPOC, as is the new co-chair who is starting next month. The membership is not currently 50% people of color, but it may be next year. That is a good question. We set the 50% threshold for membership because we really want to make sure that self-advocates of color are getting funding, that organizations that are majority self-advocates of color are getting funding. I also understand that membership shifts. I don't want to say no in terms of like, I don't want to tell you not to apply for the STEP grant, especially as like a person of color leading an organization and having like a self-advocate of color as your co-chair. I don't want to tell y'all no. So I would lean towards it's still all right. Eli, do you have?
Yeah, I was gonna say, you want me to jump in?
Yes.
As a token mixed kid. So I think here that essentially I'd want you to consider maybe the framework of like what is the STEP grant offering you that maybe the affiliate grant couldn't, if you're not sure about what your membership is going to look like next year. So I think that maybe starting the process with turning your group into an affiliate group then sets yourself up so that like if next year your membership hits that 50% threshold, you can be like, look, we're already an affiliate with ASAN, and now this opportunity is open for us, so like we're going to stay in good relationship and take those opportunities and apply, right? So I think that's a good angle, one. And two, I also would echo Alex's sentiment of saying like, yeah, I think you should still apply for the STEP grant, but I then also would encourage you to maybe use an honor system, and if next year your membership isn't quite at the threshold, withdrawing your project. Does that make sense?
I think that makes sense. I think that's good advice. And for like, to be clear, part of the reason why we have the 50% threshold is when organizations are applying for the STEP grant, we don't want the situation where an organization may have self-advocates of color as their leaders, but then almost the whole organization is white, because that's not what we're trying to do. And that does not feel equitable, if that makes sense. Awesome. Thank you. Are there other questions? Because we've reached the bottom of the Q&A, and I don't think I've seen anything new pop up in the chat. Thank you, Ren. All right, I'm going to guess that we have no further questions at the moment. If anything pops up for folks, please feel free to email. Here, let me stick my email here. All right. If there's any further questions, please feel free to follow up and send an email. We'd be happy to answer. Thank you again for joining us today. And yeah, please feel free to take the rest of your day. Eli, do you have anything that you want to share as a parting information?
Let me think. I think really just I am very excited to see what everybody's cooking up. Happy to help be a part of maybe making some cool things happen in 2025.
Yeah, we're very excited about this and have been working on it for quite a while. Yeah, that is all we have for today. Thank you again for joining us. Please enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Take care.